Hi everyone, this is Newman Bond. I'm Clark Castle, and today I'm joined with Dr. Coach McDonald. Hi Kurt, you are the new eSports coach. It's a brand new team here at Newman University. What can you tell us about yourself first? Let's get to know you.
Well, Dr. Coach McDonald, I'm a professor for sociology currently, but my doctorate is in strategic leadership. So it's a business aside, similar to a DBA, but focused on leadership instead. And so what I'm bringing into this is more of the business program management type style of coaching rather than like mechanics coaching. So I'm going to teach the kids how to work together, develop as a team, and build each other up and to be the best version of each other that they can be. So that's the program that I'm planning to bring into this.
Great. What I'm hearing is it sounds like you have the tools and a plan necessary to help get this fledgling program started on a successful trajectory, as well as the students that are aiming and striving for their goals.
Right. Unlike traditional sports where you have a dedicated coach for either each sport or positions within the sport, eSports isn't at that level yet. And so eSports coaches work more as program managers versus being an expert in Rocket League or Super Smash or Call of Duty or any of that. Typically, the eSports coaches are more program manager style of leadership versus being an expert in every game, because it takes years to become good at any game, just like real sports.
Yes. Now, you mentioned some games and you've mentioned the phrase eSports. So, to someone unfamiliar, how would you describe, or what would you use to help them understand what are eSports?
Esports there's a lot of similarities with traditional sports, but there's a lot of differences as well. So obviously we're not out in the field playing hard. So whereas a traditional sports person would work hard, get in really good shape, not just because they're in the gym and exercising for their sport, but also because they're training physically, and then they probably will crash really well and sleep really well because of all that physical intensity that they go through. Esports, you're sitting there at a computer, and so there's that stereotype that it's lazy. And on the physical side, it can be. But when you start talking about pro gaming and you start talking about actual esports leagues, it's becoming more and more rare to find that lazy gamer where they just sit there and play games. They don't get out and exercise. It's really important for reaction timing and responses and things like that to have that blood flow strong enough to get to your brain, and so you can stay active and stay engaged. So there is a training regimen and things like that similar to traditional sports. Also similar to traditional sports, it's going to have a demanding schedule. Unlike some of the misconceptions I've heard, there is a training regimen. It's not just a bunch of kids sitting around playing games. It does have a requirement to be good because it is an athletic sport. We are trying to win, and it takes an average of 7,000 to 10,000 hours to even get to the level where you can even compete.
Okay.
So when I say it takes years of training and dedicated practice to a certain game to get to a certain level, it really does. And these guys are going to be practicing at least 2 hours a day. Plus, they're part of the program is exercise, like 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, or maybe 45 minutes, 3 days a week. It's going to be really important for them to stay in shape and keep that blood flow and stay hydrated. Yeah,
I know outside we've had a conversation about how you have a trick, right, where you have a volume of water for them to consume in a certain amount of time because it keeps them hydrated, and I'll let you explain.
Yeah, so being a gamer myself that can have a tendency, honestly, to sit and play for 12 hours, what I started doing so that I make sure I get up, first of all, I would exercise first in the morning, because if I say, oh, I'll do it later, I don't. So it's going to be helpful for me personally to have the accountability of the team and to work out with them or something so that I stay accountable to exercise. But on the getting up and moving around and staying hydrated portion, I have a 40-ounce bottle at home that I just go ahead and fill it up with water, or maybe I put a little flavor in the water, but I drink a lot of water. And part of the reason for that, not just to stay hydrated and stay healthy, but also so I have the urge to get up and go to the restroom. But it creates that urge to get up. And so just getting up and moving around, it's important. Doing it every hour. My watch, Apple Watch, kind of helped me train my mind to realize the importance of standing up and moving every hour. And so the water bottle, the bigger water bottle with plenty of water, that's how I can create that urge and necessity to want to get up every single hour.
Well, great. I think that's brilliant. So to some critics, esports might seem like it's a stretch, at least like to justify or legitimize the gaming hobby. I've heard you say some of the misconceptions. In fact, there's a movie coming out,
Gran Turismo.
Yes, exactly. Where one of the people in the preview is saying, "Oh, they're just grinding gamer kids." You know, they couldn't do it in real life. In this case, or in that case, racing. So, do you hear from the people that when you were trying to reach the coaching level of esports, what were their skepticism?
There's still skepticisms. Yeah. The first thing is a lot of people don't even know what esports is, so I'm working on figuring out different creative ways to educate Wichita to help people understand, especially business leaders and people that might want to get involved with the program, that what is esports. So that's the first obstacle. But for the people that do have a basic understanding of, I've played games before, and video games isn't really an athletic sport. Well, on one hand, they're accurate. We are gamers sitting there in front of a computer. We're not physically out there training like we would for basketball or football or soccer or any of those other intensive sports that are physically intensive. The mental aspect that's there is right on par with what traditional athletes have to endure. They can't go in having a self-defeating attitude. They have to overcome challenges. They have to adapt to, they have a plan going in, but they have to adapt based on what the other team does. Maybe they wanted to throw this pass but instead they have to run around this other guy and then throw, or maybe they just have to run themselves. So, and trying to use football as an analogy there, but constantly evaluating and adapting and being flexible with your plan and working with your team and building that cohesiveness, that element is there. So, and then on the other side, because we're not training physically like the athletes do, which is time intensive and things like that, we're going to be doing other things. So we have a few other options here that's going to help with students making transferable skills into the real world. As a matter of fact, part of what I'm going to require as the 1 credit hour course that this is for them to submit to me an update of their CV every semester. So I want to know what they're doing that they can apply to the real world. So some of the things that they're going to do is like adaptive leadership, cultural agility, becoming flexible with plans, planning well, planning ahead, but also learning that if a plan fails, you can change the plan, which is huge. And a lot of people have what's called commitment of escalation, to use business terms, where they make a plan and they commit so strongly to it that they might actually end up becoming self-defeating through that plan.
Right.
So things like that, also building each other up, team leadership. A lot of people use the term 360 feedback, but they don't execute it properly. Okay. 360 feedback is supposed to be positive criticism, where we help and build each other up in the strongest ways, but a lot of people just use it to nitpick. And I've seen this I'm a business consultant on the side, so I've seen this with some of the groups that I've worked with. Being able to actually utilize 360 feedback, which includes all types of elements, but one of the strongest elements is active listening. This is going to be one of the most crucial things they can bring into the workplace, because no matter who we are, we're not going to be the expert at everything unless we're just one of the rare, 50 people in the world or however many that is just really good at everything they do. But most people are going to rely on a team to improve a business overall. It's a lot more organic than it is linear. And so the type of things that they're going to learn through esports, as far as team development, leadership, personal development, overcoming any obstacles, adapting to plans, being flexible, learning what different cultural agilities and different cultures include. All of these things is going to be part of what they learn here in this program.
I've heard a few things that have like a ping pong ball, just made ideas bounce around my head, because you're talking about the time commitment that at least the ones that go on to achieve greatness have to put in. It aligns with that Malcolm Gladwell timeline of putting 10,000 hours invested into an activity.
That's true.
Traditionally lines up with, and you said 7,000 to 10,000 hours. So that was one thing that came to mind. And whether, like you've said to me personally, whether you've practiced getting a ball precisely to someone at a certain distance, doing that over and over again, that repetition, that translates, or there's the similarities to the amount of geometry you have to put into, like with Rocket League, for example. I need the ball to take this much time to stay airborne at this point so it doesn't get intercepted. Or I need to bounce off of a certain target, then you like billiards, thinking about getting the object to the destination. So there's so many of those similar sports similarities in the games that you're going to be playing. Because I know we talked that you are going to start with Rocket League and Smash Brothers, right? What about those games? First, how did you determine those were the games, and what about them can you share with the
Well, I knew Rocket League was going to be one right off the bat because we are a Catholic institution, and we have a value of a nonviolence, like within our institution. We value nonviolence. So I knew right away Rocket League, out of all the esports games, would be the one that could get approved, first of all. Second of all, there's a lot of challenges on the back end in esports right now through franchise teams and certain publishers where it might be a little more risky to launch a program with certain games. Rocket League has been one of the games that the publisher has been really working well with pro teams, with colleges, with high schools, and so and right now it's actually the top game out of all the collegiate esports. It's the top collegiate esport, and so it's a really safe and stable launch, and it's not violent, so we can play that. And honestly, because it's like race car soccer, the people that don't know what esports is, Rocket League is a great way to introduce them, because the people that don't know esports, they know soccer, they know basketball, they know football, and so putting them in a soccer stadium with an oversized ball, they're going to be able to see, okay, team orange, team blue, and they're going to be able to recognize what's going on, even if they don't experience it. What I'd like to do is help people experience it so they understand just how good these players have to be compared to just picking up a controller and playing. So Rocket League was chosen for all those reasons. It's about bridging gaps and starting with a stable launch. Super Smash Brothers was started because I want to create kind of a hybridization of what the online esport is. So right now esports is mostly online. There's some in-person competitions, but a lot of it's streamed online. When you go to a football game or baseball game or basketball or anything, part of the excitement is the fans around you. So even if, I'm not a super sports enthusiast, I'm a gamer, I'm not super into sports, but I do enjoy going to the games and being involved in the crowd that's there, and especially Super Bowl type events where everybody's there for one reason, to cheer their team, and that's what brings excitement and adds value to the sport beyond just sitting there. If it was one person watching the Super Bowl on the screen, that person may be a diehard fan and might get excited, but it's not as exciting as a group of people. So with esports, I want to hybridize that. I talked to WSU already, and we're looks like they were actually looking for this too, but we're looking at creating some type of live environment where we can compete with one another or host exhibition matches or host little fairs. And it's possible we'll actually end up doing this at Riverfest next year. We're in the talks with that. So we'll see where that ends up. But we're trying to create some type of an event where people can get that traditional sports excitement out of esports without just laying in bed watching on their phones. And
Right.
I'll actually cheer for my team, like when I'm watching a Rocket League and somebody does a great play, I'm like, oh, something like that.
Yeah.
But when you're among a crowd, when you see people that are in esports crowds, that excitement that happens when something cool happens, that excitement that happens with the commentators and everybody, there's just a lot more energy there. And so I'm wanting to also kind of bridge that gap. Yeah, we're going to have our online stuff, but I want to find a way to host local competition as well so people can actually be there and get excited about it. And that's actually part of the 5-year plan I'm writing for this group, for this team.
Excellent. Again, scatterbrained, but so let me see if I can connect them. The idea of being in a place, the impact the crowd has on the competitors, that I've heard that's a real thing. For example, when the Seattle Seahawks were, again, I don't follow sports very closely, but they were going for something either in the playoffs or the actual Super Bowl itself. I heard that the fans at their home stadium were able to create so much noise that it was actually registering as a very minor earthquake, like 2 point something magnitude. Their stomps or collective cheers were that amazing. So just imagining what that must feel like on the ground. I know a lot of people just are hyper focused on stopping somebody, but I've been to concerts. I don't know if you've been to concerts, but you can feel sound in your chest. It's the Star Wars equivalent of the Force,
Yeah.
It's something that you just feel inside you. So to think about if we play against WSU and people can, whether they have a big screen or they're watching up on the monitors, and and something like the size Coke Arena, just cheering, got
That
half
would be
divided,
cool.
half red and blue, half yellow, gold and black, and
The cool thing is we actually have the elements to make that happen here. We just need the crowd to drive it and the revenue to generate it. So we have a portable service here their professional job is to set up events and set up esports arenas for tournament plays and stuff like that. And they do things like in Trust Bank Arena.
Yeah.
And so we have the infrastructure here ready to go. We just need enough people to be interested in it to create that and make that a possibility. So right now, we're at the very beginning of the snowball effect for esports. So it's been kind of slowly moving along. Research has actually been done on the psychological and sociological side on esports since the Diablo 2 days and World of Warcraft early days. So finally some of that stuff is catching up. People are starting to get interested, and military actually is starting to get interested. I'm meeting with a military guy next week actually. He's very interested in esports because of the type of development they gain through esports. It's finally reached $1 billion industry, and so that's the first really point where things start getting taken seriously, is when something reaches $1 billion as an industry.
all the investors
By the
suddenly
end,
start
people are starting to look at it. By the end of this decade, in 2029, it's anticipated to be over a $5 billion industry. So to put that in context, meal replacement bars are a $4 billion industry right now.
Okay.
So it's going to be bigger than even some consumable goods. And right now, video games overall is bigger than both TV and movies combined.
I've heard that for a while, yeah.
And COVID probably helped with that a little bit, but the snowball effect has happened, and it's continuing to grow. The excitement is continuing to grow, and the generation that's interested, college age right now and younger, they're the ones that are helping to set that future up. And it's really exciting that we get to actually be at the beginning of this future.
Still on the topic of spaces, this new gaming room has just been, or still in the process, right? We're still working on getting things to your vision. Well, Why don't you point out some of the things you're most proud of, or at least mention some of the things, that way we don't have to move
Well,
out.
the green screen wall was one of the first things I asked if we could do, because for live streaming you need green screens, or you don't need them, but it just looks better if you have a green screen behind you, because you can take whatever's on that screen and turn it into either extra gaming background, which is most likely what they'll do, but unlike your Zoom calls and things like that where people change the backgrounds, but then they start looking around and their ears get cut off or part of their head gets cut off. The green screen helps eliminate that, but still give you a different background, whatever background you want to fill in.
Sure.
Typically with gaming, you fill in the extra space outside of the person and the chair. You fill that in with the extra game rather than just this box of blank space. So that's why I wanted the green screen wall. I want to enable my students to start live streaming and start building themselves up as a brand, so that they understand by the time they graduate, they understand branding, they understand launching, they understand startups, they understand what it takes to start a business of their own, basically. And it's going to be like YouTube, Street, Twitch type stuff, but they're going to have to learn real skills like editing and marketing and data analytics and things like that in order to be successful in streaming. So this will give them that experience live, like for real. So the green screen was kind of the start of that. We also had these wood tables that, I like wood tables, and these are beautiful tables. They don't scream eSports, but I was trying to evaluate, do we want to buy gaming tables? Do we want to buy, what do we want to do? It turned out wrapping these tables with our logo actually was more cost effective than just buying all new tables. We can still keep the beautiful tables we've already had, which kind of has a history. I like that. There's a little bit of a history with these tables, but we've modernized it, and I think that's really neat. We also, over in one corner, we have a lounge area where people, when they're not practicing their sport and they just want to play and relax together and just kind of enjoy a game, they can go into this lounge corner and play Super Smash or Mario Kart or something along those lines. These two tables, along with a few more, is a Rocket League table, Rocket League section. This is where Rocket League is going to happen. We have the PCs ready. They can start recording. Over in another corner this way, we have the Nintendo Switch OLEDs.
I see that.
That way they can play portably, but the OLED actually helps reduce blue light. So if they want to play portably, they can actually have a better effect on their eyes, and they can carry it around the room with them if they want to. Or we'll have the setup there. We're waiting on monitors, but we'll have the setup there, and they can play on the screen if they want to. And there's two tables facing each other, so each Switch can have 4 players, I think, on each Switch, or maybe even 8. But you can play against each other, Switch to Switch, and they can all sit around. So that's going to be the competitive section. We're eventually going to get computers there for live streaming as well. So right now, Rocket League is more set up for live streaming, or I can set up a situation where they can bring a Switch over and live stream with this behind them as well. And then right behind the camera this way, I'm setting up a commentator booth for sportscasting.
Excellent.
We don't have the budget to actually get all the stuff going right now, but when we can, I want to do sportscasting. So somebody that wanted to sportscast but didn't really find the right sport, it'll give somebody another opportunity. Like they can put on their resume voiceovers, commentating, things like that, because that's what you do when you're sportscasting.
One of the communication majors could definitely
absolutely, and that's what I'll be looking for too. So right now this room is like halfway done with kind of where I want it to be. Eventually the chairs that are in the lounge area, I'd kind of like to replace that with a reclining couch, maybe some underglow lighting, cup holders, and a charging station, something like that. And obviously get the rest of the stuff I need for the commentator booth. And then 4 more stations so I can have Team A and Team B for Rocket League, not just one team. And they can actually practice against each other and help each other out live versus just watching like 4 people practicing together. 4 because a sub is required. For those that know about Rocket League, it's a 3v3 game typically. So, but substitutes are required, so 4 practicing at a time. So that's the room layout and kind of where we're at and what it looks like. My desk is right in the middle, so I can see what's going on all the way around the whole room all the time and be there for students when they need me.
Well, if you don't mind talking a little, because I've seen some footage of Rocket League. It looks like there's so many variables or so many things to manage in that game. How people, again, going back to in case there's anyone still skeptical in the audience or doesn't quite grasp what's being demanded of the players, let's get down to how much of the driving on that level you have to manage, as well as the frenetic or just wild movement of the ball in the arena, right? Because it's not just limited to, it's kind of like indoor soccer, right? Where it can actually go off walls, there's no out of bounds.
Right, there's no out of bounds, so it is a lot more like indoor soccer. It can actually go off the ceiling as well. So there's players that'll actually get on the ceiling and then use special, like, high-level techniques to jump off the ceiling and follow the ball into the goal. It's called Rocket League because the cars have rockets on them. So you might think old school Michael Keaton Batmobile type thing, and actually that car is in the game too. So you can actually you can maneuver 360, literally 360, all the way around, up, down, sideways. There's a jump mechanic, even a double jump mechanic, and so you can utilize different jumps along with the flying. It sounds simple when you talk about it, and the concept really is simple. The geometry and the practice that's involved behind it, I'm still amazed when I watch pros play this game compared to the level I'm at or some of my other better friends are at. They can see things happening and react to it before the ball is in play, so to speak. So if we were to compare it with soccer, indoor soccer, you'd be able to, if somebody decided they wanted to kick the ball and have it bounce off the wall and then move, and that was a pass to a teammate in the forward position, so that they could then try to tap the ball in or something like that. Yeah, it's similar to that, but the opposing team might see that you're running up to the ball, and they would somehow in their mind see the trajectory of where your leg is going and how you're going to kick and the exact placement you're going to kick the ball. And so they're already jumping up in the air, anticipating that exact trajectory before you've even completed the move. And that's the kind of stuff that is just incredible. The physics behind it, understanding the physics on a basic level, it's important and it's there. But getting beyond that, to where you can see the moves before they even happen. And you're not just reactionary, you're anticipatory, and you can actually see what's coming before the player even touches the ball on the other team. And that's the level that these guys hopefully will be at, is that kind of level. Because in all honesty, to play in the big competitions, like what the Big 12 or something like that would be. To play in the big competitions, you have to be in the top 16 teams in the nation. Otherwise, you don't get in the big competitions. You're playing similar to what D2 schools would do, or schools that aren't even NCAA. They're out there and they're playing, and they might have their own little tournament, but it's going to be a lot smaller scale. To be in the big leagues, like what the top D1 stuff is doing, then you're going to be playing, you have to be in a top 16 team. Usually that comes with a lot of financial gain too. A lot of like full ride scholarships and things like that. So not every school is able to be there, but if you can get one of those great players on your team, then it brings a lot of appeal to that school. Right.
I mean, that's, again, I'm not the best to comment on it, but when I think of popular teams, they usually have a name that either precedes or accompanies. Like, for example, Kansas City Chiefs, everyone thinks the Mahomes character, their quarterback, right? At least right now, I feel like that's the combination. And years earlier, when you thought the Bulls, you thought Michael Jordan. So the Lakers, Kobe Bryant, like there's that one. And and actually bridging traditional sports like you're talking about, the Philadelphia Eagles, they have a player that's actually bought a team in Rocket League, and that Rocket League team is in the top 16 on the pro teams, not college but pro, and I think they're called Digitation or something along those lines. But yeah,
traditional sports people are starting to get into esports as well, and actually buying teams and being a part of it. So kind of like Lionel Messi bought some soccer
Excellent.
teams and stuff like that.
Well, I've heard a lot about the places that people can go and grow and professionally. How do you believe esports at Newman will benefit the students spiritually? Or do you, I know, at least I've heard that you have put a lot of stock into that. And
Right. Well, I'm published in the Journal of Biblical Perspectives and Leadership. And so leadership and biblical perspectives for me is something I'm constantly, consciously aware of. So I want to evaluate that at all the time. So, but that's a twofold answer.
Oh.
So when we talk about spirituality, obviously there's the religious component that everybody thinks of with spirituality. But for those that are non-spiritual, in the academic world, spirituality can be defined as serving something greater than yourself, or doing something like a higher calling, that type of thing. So obviously for the religious students, being that I went through Bible college and things like that, I'll be able to talk with them and converse with them on that level. Like, I actually taught Faith and Profit last semester, or 2 semesters ago, for another school, and that class was all about where's the ethical lines between what's faith and what's profit. Like, how do we blend both business ethics and faith ethics, and where is there a line we should or should not cross? Should we even call it business ethics? Can that even be in the same category as faith? So those type of conversations, they're actually a lot of fun for me. I really, as long as the person is a reasonable person and we can actually talk, rather than just a bashing session or something.
Yeah.
So as long as that exists, those are fun conversations. So that's likely going to happen in here for students that are Christian or Catholic or anything else. And since this is a Catholic school, I expect that to happen at some point. For the people that aren't religious, one of the things that drew me into esports the way we know it today, I grew up playing esports, but it wasn't called esports. It was just video game tournaments. So it was Street Fighter Alpha 3 is where I got started, and then Street Fighter EX 3 Plus, and I did Street Fighter for a while. Then I did Halo 2 because I was playing with some other people that were good, and they just started a team and we became really good. So I followed that path, and even still today with the Elder Scrolls Online, I'm really good. Every time I do the solo arenas and things like that, I place in the top 100 in the world on the leaderboards. And so I like playing and getting good, and that game I've got like 15,000 hours in or more. So it takes a long time to get that good, like I was saying before. But when we talk about the non-spiritual component, giving back, one of the things that really drew me to esports as we know it today was I like Mario, and Mario Maker I really like, even more than the traditional Mario games. I like Mario Maker, people creating levels and trying to beat the levels that are like 1% or less of people have been able to beat. I like doing those little challenges for myself. And so I started following at the time this famous streamer, his name is Ryukar. He's probably the most famous Mario streamer, if not the most famous, one of the top ones. And so I followed this guy, and one day I saw he was on some live stream for some random channel I hadn't heard of. It was a couch, and 2 people were sitting on a couch, 2 people were sitting on the floor, and they're all holding their Nintendo controllers, and the live stream is Mario, and I'm like, wow, this looks like something I did when I was a kid. So I click on it. Turns out it's a charity live stream.
Okay.
By the time, this was 4 of the best Mario players in America for Mario Maker. And by the time I tuned into this charity live stream, they had already made over $1 million for their charity between the 4 of them. And so that kind of stuff is what really got me interested in esports as we know it today. Seeing, wow, these people, they have this following. It's not like this big Call of Duty game or something. It's Mario Maker. Like, it's a very niche type genre, still popular, but a lot smaller than something like Call of Duty or Valorant or something today is. And yet they were able to raise millions for their charity because it's just 4 people together having fun and playing Mario. People enjoyed that. People were donating, and that's when the world of esports really became, like, I knew the numbers from reading them, that money was there. But I didn't experience it until that stream, and I saw it, like, experienced it firsthand. It was on a stream, so I wasn't like live there, but I experienced it firsthand, and I saw what the world of esports can become. And I thought that was really neat. So when we talk about spirituality or giving back to humanity or something like that, that's something I would like to incorporate. I've actually been talking to Sister Therese to see what type of possibilities there are. That's going to be a conversation that probably occurs several times as we try to develop the ideas. But I want to see if we can do some type of charity stream eventually as we build our team and as we gain some credibility and we have followers. Maybe we can do a smaller scale charity similar to that. It would be a lot of fun, I think, to be able to not just experience that, but have, for resume purposes, the team be able to contribute to say, I helped coordinate this event, this is what I did, and this is the fund. So they're going to learn fundraising and stuff. That's the type of stuff that translates to real world that they're going to bring with them post-program. It's not just we have tacit learning and explicit learning. The books and everything, that's the explicit learning. The tacit learning is what you can experience, what you do. And I want to create as much tacit learning in this environment so they have that nice blend so that they're more valuable later when they're looking for actual jobs.
Terrific. I mean, a lot of forethought put into this. So then, what do you believe games can teach us about humanity? Or what? Something more soft?
A statistic I heard when I was at the NACE conference, which is like the NCAA, but it's eSports, NACE. One thing that they said that they're proud of with eSports in particular compared to any other department is the inclusivity, and apparently it was 39% more inclusive than the number 2 spot. Okay. So, and that's not just inclusivity as the hot buzzword that we hear today. That's inclusivity as we don't care if the person's boy or girl or other or whatever culture they are. We don't care if they have a Mexican background, Spanish, white American, black American. We don't care what the background is. Can you play on my team? And that seems to be the general consensus overall, which I really appreciate, because back when I was a manager and I would hire people, sometimes I would hire people because, hey, you can give us a leg up because you speak Spanish and we have X amount of Spanish clients coming in. I get it. But what I typically try to hire for is what's called the 3 C's of hiring, which involves character, chemistry, and competence. And so the person's character is important. Are they the type of person that will live up the values that the company admires and wants represented for their company? And then chemistry, do they get along well with the team? That's really important, because if they don't, the whole team can drag down, or they can that one person can create what's called emotional triangles. It's like the water cooler mentality. Okay. They can create the emotional triangles, talking about one person and building a bond with one person, but breaking bonds with other, and just creating little minute cliques within the group, and creating tension and creating diversity instead of inclusive or what's the word I'm looking for? Division. Sorry, creating division rather than inclusion. Sure. And so that chemistry is really important for any business, and it's important for any team. And so I want them to have good chemistry with whoever we are. And then competence. The reason this is a rank order: character, chemistry, and competence. Competence can almost always be trained. Now there are limitations, like for example, I have a hip disorder, so I'm not ever going to be competent at running a soccer field or a football field or anything like that. It's just, unless I can get an outlandish hip replacement with alien technology or something. At a certain point, competence has to meet reality. But for the most part, competence can be trained. If you see some of that there, competence can be trained. And so with that blend of 3 things, that's how I was thinking I would want to bring in teammates for this team. And so learning about the inclusivity statistic that is traditional with esports, if we can call it traditional, given that esports is still fairly new. Right. Given the inclusivity that esports has the opportunity to allow versus other sports where we can have boys and girls on one team, and we can have all kinds of different, it doesn't matter their race or their color or their background. They all come in here and they truly do have an equal opportunity, whereas things have to be segregated for other sports just because it's physical. And so, but here, because we're gamers, we can get in and we can actually include everyone, as long as they're willing to put in the work. It's really cool.
Absolutely. I have to ask, what about the travel involved? I mean, a lot of the things we talked about online or local with the, couch buddies or, anyways, so what does that look like for this sport?
So travel for this sport right now is still limited. That's part of the reason, even before I got the job, I went to WSU. I was doing an industry analysis to decide if I was offered this job, is it actually what I really want to do for the long-term future? Because I want to settle in somewhere where this is going to be my career till I retire. And so this is a promising opportunity. So aside from that, I talked to WSU and I was asking them what their thoughts were, not just about the industry, but about traditional sports versus esports, and if there's some type of hybrid model. And they were already thinking the same thing. And so they were pretty excited. As a matter of fact, it sounds like through the NACE, the WSU coach that's been doing this for like 8 years or more and at other big schools, he's actually going to become a mentor to help me get a stronger foothold in this as well. So that'll only bridge the friendly rivalry between us and WSU a little bit more. And then eventually as friends or somebody gets in, they can become part of it. There's actually through the MIAA or a sister of it perhaps, I'm not completely clear on how that's working, but there's a new conference for esports starting called the Midwest Collegiate Esports Conference, and so the MKEC or MCEC, sorry, and so that focus is trying to get on-site competition between different esports teams, because currently, for the most part, you play everything online, and if you're good enough, if your team is good enough, then you go on site for like a weekend and you go to this big tournament, but it's like a weekend long. So like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and that's like the season. And it's 2 seasons. It can be 3 seasons actually. There's a summer season as well. Right now we're going to focus on just fall and spring semester. But there's a conference that's just now getting started, and they're looking at getting going. So unfortunately, it looks like they're playing a game that we're not going to be able to play right away, for a lot of different reasons. We don't need to get into it, but we're not going to be able to play it right away. But it's something that's on our radar that eventually we could play. So I was approved for, going back to that non-violence thing earlier. I was approved basically for Star Wars level violence or below. The mentality, not dismemberment, but the mentality behind that being like the laser guns and like the pew pew and that type, but not realistic violence. So probably not Call of Duty or CSGO. We're probably not going to be able to go that route, but that's okay. If we're recruiting high school students, high school students don't play mature games anyway. They can't in high school.
I guess they're marketed to 17
it would be
above,
a quick transition. But will we lose some target market? We might, but that'll give us the strength to focus on what we are doing. So that's where we're at on that. What did I answer? The question?
And I feel like Hollywood has found just and to support the idea that you don't have to do our content to be successful, right? I mean, most of the big summer blockbusters come in at around a PG-13 or ratings, or the TV equivalent of that, and that brings the families, multiple age groups together to enjoy something together.
Yeah. In esports, the most popular games, 2 or 3 of them are those violent shooters. But the most popular game is Rocket League. Super Smash is in the top 10, which is a Nintendo game. It's a fighting game, so it's mild violence. But the way esports is, games move up and down. There's trends change. Rocket League is a staple that's been around a long time. Call of Duty has been a staple. It's a new game each year, but it's still Call of Duty. So those two have been staples. Counter-Strike Global Operations has also been a pretty strong staple in the community.
I remember hearing about that in like the early 2000s, right? Where people used to have those LAN parties, the desktops, and you're either counter-terrorists or the terrorists.
And League of Legends has been real popular for a long time, and Fortnite. We might end up expanding into Fortnite soon. League of Legends I want to expand into, but right now there's some turmoil with that game. We're not sure how prevalent it'll stay, at least in America. We're not sure how relevant that game will continue. So I'm waiting a year or two to see what that looks like in the future. There's also new games that are up and coming, like Street Fighter 6, which I've already got a student asking me about that game. So there's just not collegiate competition yet for that game. But once there is, I would anticipate Street Fighter 6 becoming a strong contender because Capcom themselves have promised $1 million in their first competition, which automatically brings it up to high-level esports competitive play. Some companies will do that kind of stuff, and then the game just flops anyway because it wasn't done well. But Street Fighter 6 has had a really high positive reception from fans, both my generation that started in the alpha days, and even Street Fighter 2 Turbo, so my generation,
so many quarters,
but even the young, all those quarters back in the hundreds and hundreds of quarters. But all the way to modern. There's new games that are really, like one game that looks like it's promising is called Omega Strikers. It actually combines elements of League of Legends as far as the characters and movesets with Rocket League, but from a two-dimensional, top-down view, so kind of like FIFA, top-down type view. But it combines League of Legends and Rocket League and special moves and indoor soccer and just it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. And actually now some of the retro stuff is coming back. So anybody that's played Killer Queen, it's a popular game that's really up and rising, but it's a retro 8 or 16-bit type arcade game. Looks like that was actually at the NACE conference. They're actually working actively to make that an esports title. So there's a lot that's coming, and this is where some of the differences are between traditional sports and esports. In esports, it does take a lot of dedication and time, 10,000 hours, and assuming you're playing 4 hours a day, that's a few years, so we're talking about a lot of dedicated training. But traditional athletes, the sports that exist there are staple sports and have been for decades. And so a new sport might come in like foot golf or disc golf and stuff, and there's interest in that, and some of those are growing, some of them aren't, but the staple sports are there. Esports hasn't quite reached those. We're approaching the staple sports like Rocket League and Call of Duty, but I wouldn't say it's a solidified staple sport. So it's not. In traditional sports, somebody can be a 4-year-old and start playing soccer and then grow up and work toward becoming better and better and better at soccer all the way up to college, get a scholarship, and maybe even go pro if they're one of the very best. In esports, you grow up playing games as a little kid. And you grow up and you get better and better and better. But the game you played as a kid, like Mario or something, may not be the game you play competitively in college. And so there is some difference there as far as the esports go. And I'm hoping games or movies like this Gran Turismo coming out will actually help bridge the gap, because there's misconceptions on both sides. There's the gamer side misconception and the non-gamer side misconception. So we discussed the non-gamer misconception, where games are easy, the kids are lazy, they're just there playing games and it's a free scholarship, which that misconception is not accurate. But there's also the gaming misconception from the gamer end, where they feel like because they can do this in a game, they can do it in real life, and that's also not entirely accurate. I played a lot of motorcycle racing games back in the day. That helped me get to know tracks and turns and how to apex and things like that. But that didn't translate to when I went to a track for the first time down in Hallett, Oklahoma, and I took my motorcycle there and actually started learning how to become a racer and trying to get my AMA license so I could race. It was a completely different world. Fortunately, I was athletic, and so I could do it. But you don't sit down on that chair. Here, I'm sitting down on a chair, But on that motorcycle, it was basically a wall sit the entire time. That you don't sit down. But karate had kind of trained me for that because I had to sit in a karate stance for the first time I did it for a full hour, just sitting in that stance. And so I was already at a point where I could do that. So there's misconceptions on both sides. And so this Gran Turismo movie, it's going to help bridge those gaps between gamer expectations of, oh, I played this all the time. I play Street Fighter all the time. I can go fight anybody, like the bouncers at the club, obviously, because I play Street Fighter. But then there's also the other misconceptions of there's no transferable skills whatsoever, and they're lazy and they don't actually do anything but play a game. No, they work really, really hard to get really good at their sport. So working to bridge those gaps together is going to be probably the biggest obstacle that the esports team needs to overcome, not just from the non-gamers perspective, but also what gamers actually, what their perception of reality is.
Well, this is perfect time to ask this question. So you're in the recruiting process and continuing to build your team for the 23-24 year. What advice do you have for either the high schoolers or current students with an interest in gaming, particularly in order to support their education?
One of the quotes I read, I don't remember what book it was, but it was talking about getting into college and things like that. It said, find a mentor, not a program.
Okay.
So I would, based on that conversation in the book, I would suggest that they visit the schools and find out, like, if you're interested in esports and you know Newman has esports or WSU has esports, go talk to those coaches and see what that mentorship would be like. Obviously, the program is important. Since we don't have engineering here, it wouldn't make sense to try to get an English degree or something, or medicine, if you want to be an engineer. Likewise, if they don't have as good of a nursing program and we have a really strong nursing program, it doesn't make as much sense to go there for engineering if nursing is your ultimate goal. So the program is like black and white, it's important. But beyond that, what's important is finding that mentor, and that could be your coach, that, like the esports coach. That could be a teacher. That could be like you take classes over 4 years. Maybe one of those professors will really jive with you in a way that others didn't. So the encouragement that I found was find a mentor, not a program. So there's a lot of programs that can offer a lot of similar things. If you get nursing here versus some other school like on the East Coast, what do we have to offer? We have excellent people to work with. We have that small town mentality, or small school mentality, but in a larger city with all the conveniences. So I would visit the universities. Other than that, most coaches have a Discord, so you can talk to them on Discord, like add them on Discord. They're willing to talk to you. Stay Plugged In is a website that is .gg. StayPluggedIn.gg is a website where a lot of coaches are looking for talent, where both students and coaches can put their names out there and reach out to one another. So even right now, well, not right now, but by the end of next week, a student will be able to look up Newman University on Stay Plugged In and find me, and be able to find my email or my phone number or Discord or something like that, and they can actually reach out to me. So the very first place is just asking questions. What do you offer? What sport do you offer? So we offer Rocket League and Super Smash. So if a person wants to play Valorant, maybe this isn't the place for them to go. But if they really are into Rocket League or Super Smash or some of the other games we expand into, this is a great place to be. And we're going to build strong students. So I've shared a little bit about what I have to offer and what I'm going to help the students and help challenge them grow. So the students that are interested in that, which is building themselves up, becoming a leader, becoming a stronger, having a stronger resume or CV on your profile, learning adaptability and flexibility, all this type of stuff. If that's what they're interested in, that's what I can offer and what I can help them with. If they want to start a business while they're here, I can help them do that too. So
excellent.
That's the type of thing that I can help with and what my specialty is. So if they're looking for something completely different, then they might find another person that reaches their goals better.
Well, lightning round. These are meant to just be snap, just answer, move on, all right? So what is an acclaimed game you have not played and might be ashamed of it?
An acclaimed game I have not played and might be ashamed.
Or embarrassed if people found out.
That I didn't play? Probably Demon Souls.
Okay. What's your favorite game soundtrack?
I didn't play the game much, but Donkey Kong Country on Super Nintendo was one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard.
What's your fondest video game memory?
There's a lot, but I would say what bridged virtual versus reality, which I actually got invited to a person's wedding. They met in the game, they got married in the game, and then they had a wedding in real life, and I got to go to Arizona and be a part of that wedding.
And that does sound great. All right, so we have a maybe dining center on campus. If they made a sandwich after you, they called it the Kurt or Dr. McDonald, what's on that sandwich?
Something simple, probably. I'm a simple kind of guy. I actually really enjoy grilled cheese and tomato soup. So if they had like the curdle or something like that, it would probably be grilled cheese and tomato soup.
I love it. Sounds good. All right, everyone, this is Dr. Coach McDonald, the head eSports coach here at Newman University. This is the Newman Bond. Thank you for joining us. Find out more at newmanu.edu/podcast.